The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 90 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director of Wealth Builders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. Good to be with you again on episode 90.
I know.
That's approaching 100, aren't we?
We're on the last straight to 100. Yeah, exciting stuff. So it's obviously the start of a new year, Kevin, and today's episode is really about thinking big. And our guest today, Ryan Luke, is someone who has got quite a unique take on this. And we're going to be hearing about the 1,000 property mindset and the importance of having systems and people around you that can help you to think bigger.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's where leverage comes from, in business, doesn't it? It's the expansion of having more people to do certain things. And of course, we know deep in the psyche of a good wealth builder is the knowledge of their own wealth dynamic. And even though I don't think Ryan has done his wealth dynamic in the way we would know it, it's pretty obvious when you start talking to him where he fits, isn't it, really?
Yeah, definitely. He's someone who likes to pay attention to detail, and he talks about, sometimes you can overanalyze things. But, even if you're not a numbers person, then, you can get people around you who love doing the things that you hate. And of course, the best way to really get clear on where your strengths and weaknesses are by taking the wealth dynamics test. And we can put a link to that in today's show notes as well.
Yeah. And, but it's obvious where he is, and good to see it. But the other thing, of course, is not just leverage of people, it's leverage of systems and process. So I think it's playing very well into his actions. And I think it all starts, as it always does. What was the catalyst? Well, you'll hear what the catalyst was, although you hear the catalyst actually more towards the end than you do at the beginning. And then, what he's done to build teams based on a mindset of thinking way, way, way beyond what you could see yourself doing if you were doing it as an individual. And I think that's a very powerful lesson. And in fact, probably is the essence of the lesson that we learned today from Ryan.
Yeah, well, let's not wait any longer. Let's head on over to our interview today with Ryan Luke. Ryan, welcome to Wealth Talk today.
Hi, how are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Good to have you on today. Now, we're going to be talking about systems and processes and the importance of tracking your numbers in your business, because this has been, fundamental to your success over the last few years, Ryan. But before we do that, would you mind just introducing yourself for our listeners and give them a bit of an idea as to who you are and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So my name's Ryan Luke. I am predominantly a Northeast property investor, so tend to invest in the North, and heavily involved in serviced accommodation, but also filtering, diversified the portfolio into HMOs and single lets, and do a bit of coaching now and mentoring to try and help people follow in the footsteps, because I do think property is a great game, and I think there's a lot of wealth to be built from it. So yeah, that's in brief what I do.
And of course, at Wealth Builders, we talk about the 7 pillars of wealth. So, focusing on the property pillar. But you mentioned there your strategy, Ryan, and that strategy is service accommodation. So, before we continue, I've got to ask you, Ryan, this has been a tough year, but how have you managed to, how have you fared with that strategy this year?
Yeah, we have probably bucked the trend a bit. So we've had a really good year, and I do think it could have been better, obviously. But before COVID, I realised that serviced accommodation wasn't about stag and hen parties coming to your city for the weekend. I quickly realised it was about contractors travelling, and I started to leverage that several years ago. And that's probably helped me scale as well, because I started to win contracts and get more of their employees booked into rooms, and I could see the profitability of working with these type of companies. So everyone is now looking for direct bookings, contractor bookings, and I see it all over Facebook, which makes me laugh a bit that, since it was so easy before, like you literally got a property, put it on Airbnb, and the rest it happened, and then COVID hit and the game changed. But the game didn't really change for me, because we were already doing what people are now doing. The only thing we've lost this year is probably the weekend stag and hen parties, which would normally be, flooding to Newcastle, Durham, Sunderland, and the football crowds that used to come every other weekend. We used to get the away fans come for obviously the football matches, and so we have lost that. But the contractor bookings have been very steady. We had a great July and August because I think a lot of people were traveling in the UK rather than going overseas, mainly because they couldn't or were still a bit scared of the virus and didn't want to. So yeah, all in all, we've had a great year, and we continue to acquire and we continue to push. And I feel like the model does work really well. We're very well known now in our region. So when contractors do come up, we tend to get a lot of phone calls, or we get tagged in Facebook for. We're doing a lot of work with Amazon right now because there's 2 big centers getting built in Washington and Darlington. So we've been hosting them, and there's some huge renovations going on the quayside in Newcastle starting next year. So there's plenty of good stuff going on, and I think we've kind of set ourselves up prior to COVID to take care of that.
Yeah. So what was the catalyst for you, Ryan? Because we talk about the beginning of anyone's wealth building journey is to get really clear on the reason why. And I know that there was certainly a kind of turning point for you a few years back. Would you mind just sharing that?
Yeah, sure. So I've always worked hard, and I've always loved money. I'll be honest. A lot of it is about the money, and especially at the beginning. But I was sat on my couch, and I couldn't be bothered to take my 2-year-old son, he would have been then, to a birthday party. I just couldn't be bothered, and I wasn't really engaging too well at home, and it wasn't great, to put it that way. And then as you do, sat on the couch, feeling sorry for yourself, scrolling through Facebook, and a sponsored ad pops up about, you can build a great business, but be careful you don't burn your ship whilst you're doing it. And it just really resonated with me that, I'm putting so much time and effort into building the business up, but what's the point if you've got no family and you don't spend time with your kids and your wife hates you, and, so it really hit home, and I delved into it a bit more. I paid, there and then $300 or whatever it was to get all the videos and watch more. And I consumed all that day before they even came back from the party. And then I bought into they had a mentorship program. And that was all about kind of your 4 pillars, which was, if I remember them now, your business, your health, your faith, which isn't really my thing, but I kind of went with it. Business, health, faith, and your wife, your family. So, and it's kind of like having all 4 of them intact to be able to thrive and be the best business person you can. Because we see it so many times where you've got the most successful CEOs, but they're like 25 stone, and they're like, they just haven't taken care of the health at all. Whereas like your body is your biggest asset you're ever going to own. Without your body, you can do nothing. You can't build a business if you've got no health, or you're not long term anyway. And then obviously it was about, you can have all the money in the world, but if you've got no family, you've got no happiness. And, if you've got no kids, you've got no relationships. And so it was, I could quite quickly see that my balance was totally off. So that's why I engaged with them and really started to balance everything out. And from that, naturally, everything then becomes so much better, including the business. Yeah.
So one of the reasons, Ryan, why your business has been so successful is because of the systems, the processes that you've put together. And I know you're religious about this topic. So can we perhaps dive into, first of all, why do you believe that knowing your numbers in your business is so important?
I just think numbers can tell you anything about your business health. So I have numbers drilled down to, and people laugh when I say this, but I know how much drive time my deal sources have to spend per week to be able to acquire the number of deals that we need per week. Because I like nail it all the way down from, number of viewings we need to go on, number of offers we need to make, number of hours spent on the viewings, number of hours spent driving around the viewings. And I've got numbers for like every single department. So, how many hours we need to spend van stalking to get so many direct bookings, etc., etc. So I just think with your numbers, you can what can be measured can be altered, right? So if you're measuring something and you know it's not going well, you can alter it. If you just fly blind, which so many people do, I get so many people, clients come aboard and I'll be like, what's your monthly net profit? And they're like, oh, I don't know, but I know my bank balance is doing X, Y, or Z. It's like, you can't gauge off your bank balance, especially as you grow. There's so many different departments, and quite often, people will have maybe 5 or 10 properties, but they don't know individually how each one's performing. They just know as a whole what the performance is. Well, that's all well and good, but what if 2 of them are absolutely soaking your profit up? And if by just getting rid of them, you could be so much more profitable. So I just think knowing your numbers is a key fundamental to anything. You look at anywhere in life. I've just bought a Peloton, for example. I don't know whether you've been on one yet, but it's all about the numbers, right? Your cadence, your resistance, your output, and then you start challenging each other based on numbers, and you compete with yourself based on the numbers. Without those numbers, you'd just be riding a bike and you wouldn't know whether you're getting better, stronger, faster, fitter. So I think it's the same for your business. Without it, you don't know where to go, and I don't think you can then really identify the bottlenecks, but also identify the good areas to really, push the pedal. I'll give you a good example. So I've just recently analyzed, there's a bit of feedback coming back from the guest handlers and the operations manager saying, they're a bit overworked and this and that and the other. So I analyzed when the incoming calls were coming into the business based on the data. I was totally surprised. It's switched so much since COVID. So my guest handlers usually work 3 p.m. till 8 p.m. and over the weekend. And I used to give them Tuesdays and Wednesdays off because that predominantly was the busy and quiet times. It's changed now where basically Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays are our busiest days. We hardly get any phone calls on a Saturday and Sunday, and nothing happens after 6 o'clock. So they've been working the wrong hours for the business, which has been pulling them into overtime and then them getting stressed, et cetera, et cetera. So by knowing those numbers, we've literally, before this phone call, we had a Zoom call with everyone, and we've just rejigged the whole, working schedule for everybody, and everybody's, happy with it, and we'll roll forward with that. So that's just a real-time example, literally this morning that happened.
Yeah. No, I'm sure really when you analyze it, you could probably, put your numbers against all 4 of those pillars that you mentioned, right? How much time you're spending with your family, how much screen time are your kids spending and things like that. But obviously we're focusing more on the property business and business in general. So, another thing we talk about at Wealth Builders often is knowing your wealth dynamic and understanding, what your natural flow and the areas where you should be focusing your time and the areas where you shouldn't be focusing your time. And some people naturally like the detail, right? So they're systems people, numbers is something they enjoy doing. And for some people, they absolutely hate it, Ryan. So, is the reason that you've got such, sort of rigid systems in place, is that because it comes naturally to you, or is it something you've just identified that is super important?
I've always liked maths, I'm not going to lie. So whether that's got anything to do with anything, I don't know. But I have always been a bit of a numbers person. Whether it comes naturally or not, I don't know. I taught myself how to write code on a spreadsheet about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, because I realized I thought numbers were really important. So I was building spreadsheets out, and I thought there's got to be a quicker and easy way to analyze data. So I taught myself how to write formulas on spreadsheets. And if I could advise anyone who wants a skill set to learn, that is a skill set to learn, because you can do so much with spreadsheets when you know how to write formulas. It can save you so much time, and it gives you the data at a snapshot. So that was probably the start of me getting into numbers. And then I think as you start to see success in your business and obviously money coming in, I naturally just thought I'm quite organized as a person. So I like to, part of it, I guess the organization is the numbers as well. So it's like the numbers drive the organization. So what's working, what's not working, where am I overspending? Where do we need to make changes? And I'll probably sit in the middle of, am I a natural versus have I forced the issue to make it work? I would say I'm definitely not 100% a natural.
Yeah.
I got to the point where I overanalyzed. I was like every day putting numbers into a spreadsheet, and I was like, this isn't efficient. So now I'm like once a week, and I think that's enough if you've got the right KPIs tracked.
Yeah, well, that's a good point. So I guess for listeners now, some of them perhaps they'll say, okay, I reckon I could do this myself. Some people just would be like, no, that's my worst nightmare. In which case, that's fine. You can always find someone who loves doing the numbers and bring them in some capacity to your business. So what would be for a property business owner, Ryan? What would be like the key metrics that they should start tracking from the beginning that would have the most impact, do you think?
I think you need to track per property for starters. So each property needs to be treated as its own little business, and you want to know. And then I actually break them down into different sectors. So, i.e., service accommodation, HMOs, single lets, and then I actually go further as owned, rented, and managed. So there's like different layers. But if we keep it simple, every property, how much is coming in at the front end, what you're spending at the back end, and what your net profit is per month. 3 simple figures, really. I would probably break your costs down so you can actually know what you're spending your money on. And if you then need to dig into those figures further, you can. Obviously, your gross revenue is going to come from either guests or tenants. The tenant side's easy. It's just one payment per month. If it's guests, then you want to know what the average price is per month into that accommodation unit, and therefore can you tweak that £5 or £10 a month per person, and what difference does that make to your bottom line? So there's just little things like that can make such a big difference to your bottom line just by small little tweaks.
Yeah. And do you use any software? Are there any apps that you can recommend that have helped with this?
Do you know what? I've probably tried them all and always ended up back to a Google sheet or a spreadsheet, which I use a lot of Google Sheets now. But I come back to I taught myself how to write formula, so I feel like I can probably knock a spreadsheet up to give me the information I want quicker than I can probably put a software together or use a off-the-shelf type software. We use QuickBooks as an accountancy software, and myself and my bookkeeper, we have designed quite a lot of customized reports, which are probably copies of my Google spreadsheets in a way. So we just click a button and the information comes out. So probably between the two of them, I think most good accountancy software, Xero, QuickBooks, etc., they give you customized reports and you can pretty much click a button and pull it out, as long as all your inputs are organized, because data is only as good as the data you put in, right? So
yeah. You mentioned earlier that your biggest asset is your health, and probably another huge asset is your time, right? How do you go about tracking your time, Ryan?
So I am quite organized in the fact that every Sunday, if I showed you my Google Calendar now on the screen, it's I live a pretty boring Groundhog Day, sort of same things happen at same sort of times of the day. And then I kind of just fit, things like this in just around certain slots that I've got. But I'm quite organized in that front. And then I do block times off for time out, kids time, things like that. I do reset days every sort of 2 or 3 Saturdays where like no phone, no TV, no anything, just have a reset and go away from the world for a day and try and stay off coffee and things like that as well, which I think is important. So I don't necessarily, I know personally if I'm getting stressed about not having enough time to do anything, like if I feel like I'm running out of time, I'm constantly running around like a headless chicken. And I think that's how most property entrepreneurs feel at the beginning, because most of them are doing it around another job when they first start off. So they're trying to squeeze hours in here and there, and they never feel like they have enough time in the day. But I can quite easily look at someone's calendar and all I will see is white space on there. And, there's just no organization at all. So, I say it quite often, I feel like I control my days and weeks, whereas most people let the days control them by just waking up and seeing what happens that day.
I think that's very true. And even if you've just got, a limited number of hours per week, as long as you're focusing and you box that time off and you know that you're not going to let anything else distract you, and that is in your calendar, and that is, going to happen. And I know you start your days early. You're part of the 5 a.m. club, Ryan. So, do you have set tasks that every day in the morning, even if it's non-work related, but just to get you in the right kind of frame of mind for the day ahead?
Sure, yeah. So I don't think you can commit to getting up at 5 a.m. every morning if you haven't got a clear plan when you get up. So I've tried it where you just think, oh, I'll just get up and then I'll do something. You go back to sleep, honestly, or you sit on the couch and you drift off. You have to get up and you need to know what you're doing for the next 2-3 hours. So if not, you cannot get out of bed. It just doesn't work. So I actually did a YouTube video on this the other week. I think it's like the nine things you need to do to get up at 5 a.m. And it is about waking up and just getting straight up, no snooze and no nothing, and just going at it, but then going straight into your tasks. Obviously, you need to hydrate first and get your body going, but straight into your tasks. So I typically do, I'll do my KPI analysis from the night before from all my team members, because they have to put in their end of day report. So I have a quick flick through them, 15 minutes or so. I'll then do an hour's worth of education. So whatever I'm wanting to study at the time, whether I'm reading a book or I'm on a mentorship or whatever it might be. And then I'll do probably an hour to an hour and a half worth of firing messages into my team, just basically what I need them to do for the day, and a bit of marketing. I love doing marketing stuff, so I'm constantly working with the marketing department, just flashing ideas. That's when I get my creative sort of head on. And then I'll be honest, that's pretty much me done for the day. If I wanted to, I could stop there, and then I kind of go about my day thereafter. But that sort of 2-3 hour work that I do in that time is totally uninterrupted. There's no phones going. There's no kids running around. There's no one pestering me from work. I feel like that 3 hours focus time is probably as efficient as probably anybody does 9 to 5 at a normal job.
Yeah. So let's move on and talk about the 1,000 property mindset, Ryan, which is, something that both Kevin and I thought was really, really interesting, and certainly want to hear your take on that. Sure.
So I'm a big fan that I think it's something like whatever you say out loud has 10 times more chance of happening, or something like that. I don't know, it's all about the spoken word. So I quite often tell people that I want to acquire 1,000 properties by the time I'm 40. This was a goal that I had a couple of years ago. It's a goal that I've still got. So that's where the 1,000 comes from. Now, so the first sort of, 15 to 25 properties that I had, I ran them all myself. I didn't have really any help at all. I was doing all the DIY. I was doing all the setups. I was like wearing all the hats. And I ended up in hospital. I cracked my head open on a van door, running around like an idiot, split my head open. And, whilst we're in the hospital, my wife's like, you're going to burn out. You're at this is the sign, So I was like, how do I continue to push forward, but make sure that I don't burn out? So that's where kind of a lot of the systems and things came from. And I realized I had to put them in place. And then I realized I had to get help. But what I realized at that point was I acquired loads so quickly, but then I had a real dry spell where I didn't acquire anything for about 3 months. And I was like, well, that's because I'm doing all the operations. So I haven't got time to do all the viewings. So that made me think, okay, well, if we are going to get to 1,000 properties, from day one, I need to build with that 1,000 property mindset. So if I had 1,000 properties today, so say, for example, if someone rang me today and said, could you by any chance go and do a tenant viewing for one of the HMOs? My answer is just a flat out no. I know that it might generate me some revenue. Like, obviously, I might get a tenant on and I should really go and do it and this, that, and the other. But my mindset is the 1,000 property mindset. So if I had 1,000 properties right now, could I go and do a tenant viewing? No, it would be impossible because I'd have so many other things to do, or I would be asked to do probably 15 viewings a day or whatever it might be. So everyone in my team now, we have this 1,000 property mindset where it's like, could you do that task if we had 1,000 properties right now? And if the answer is no, then we need to then solve the problem and make sure we've got the right person in place, the right system in place, the right software, whatever it might be. I believe that by doing that now, that will help me get to 1,000 properties. And when I get to 1,000 properties, I won't then have the operational issues. And I think it's kind of it's a kind of chicken and egg scenario that if I didn't do it now, I would never get to 1,000, because I would always just be running around these operational issues and solving them rather than actually moving the business forward every week. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, it does. And you've set yourself a target for the 1,000 properties, I know. And how has this year fared in terms of, that step towards that?
Yeah, so I think I bought another one last night, actually. We were late. My brother rang me last night and told me I had to pay an auction fee. So we bought another one last night. So that's, and we've got two, I think we're about 100, that'll be 104 now for the year acquired. So I'm still hopeful we can get a few more in there before the end of the year. And, I'd like to think we could maybe push 110 this year. So it's been, as I said, it has been a good year, and I want to scale it next year again, and then that gives me. So I'm 37 in March coming up. So
and you I think you said by 40, right? Ideally, that would be
That'd be your target. 3 years, pretty much. I've got 3 years.
Good. Okay, so it's been really interesting, hearing how you run your business, and obviously what the systems that have allowed you to acquire such a large number in a short space of time, Ryan. But you're also now helping others to follow in your footsteps. So I know you're now developing, training based on what you've done and implemented in your own business, created IP, written a book, and you've helped a number of people hit that £10,000 a month recurring income. And that is the figure that most of our members in our program would say that if they could have £10,000 a month recurring, then they would be financially independent. So I'd love to know, Ryan, is there a particular kind of difference in the mindset or the approach of the people that you've helped to hit that milestone compared to those that don't?
Yeah, I think there's a number of factors, but I think for one, they don't do excuses. They're not, I haven't got time, or I can't seem to find any properties, or there's no landlords want to rent to me. I just don't hear excuses from them, and they're very organized. I think they're very organized with everything, their time, what they do, even their business setups. When we dive into them, even in the early days, they've got good structure there already. So I think they just stop at nothing, and they're always willing to invest in themselves more and ask questions. Like I'm on a mentorship at the minute, and paid a lot of money for it. And I'm a firm believer that you should always be investing in yourself or your team. So my current mentorship is for my team, so as well as myself. They've got access to it as well. So we're moving forward, and I'm constantly educating them. But the people that get to that sort of 10 grand a month, I just think they'll stop at nothing. They're constantly wanting to learn. They're educating themselves all the time. They're wanting to get better. They never have I've cracked this now, so I don't need any help. They're always wanting to just go for more and ask for more, and surround themselves with good people. And everything I ask them to do, they take on and they go and do it. And that's the key. You can have. I speak to a lot of people, whether it's on pre-onboarding calls or during the program, and I've seen a lot of people come and go through the program, and most of them are successful. And then you've got, your handful that are really successful. And it just comes to, for me, it just comes down to the individual who just will stop at nothing, and they just will do anything that's asked. And they don't make excuses, which is the biggest thing. That not once do I hear them make any excuse. Oh, I missed that this week because of X, Y, or Z, or I was a bit ill, so I decided not to bother. They show up on the days that they don't want to show up on, and for me, that's the winner. And I'd say also they are probably less risk. They're not, a bit like me. Like I'm definitely on the other end of the scale of risk averse. I'm a 2-footed sort of just get stuck in type of person, and I think in property, you've kind of got to be a bit like that. You can crunch your numbers and you can analyze your deals as much as you want, and you can get all the information you want. But at some point, you need to pull the trigger, and pulling that trigger is a risk. And for me, that tends to hold a lot of people back more than anything. too many people think, what if it doesn't work? Well, I like to think, what if it does work?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fear of failure, fear of making mistakes.
Exactly.
Those things. Yeah. Okay, great. Ryan, thank you so much for sharing today. And if obviously our listeners, they want to check you out, I have not mentioned your podcast either, which I know you host. So where's the best places for them people to go?
So I've got a Facebook group called the 7-Figure Property Empire. There's we do loads of expert lives in there, and I think we've got you guys booked in for January to come on there as well. And so that's pretty much where I hang out a lot. So feel free to join and get stuck in there. The podcast is called How to Property Podcast. Same title for the book as well. So, and official Ryan Luke is pretty much all my handles on social media. So
cool. Yeah, you're pretty active online. So plenty of stuff for people to see there. Great. Yeah. Well, look, we've been recording today on video as well. So if you want to check out the video recording of us chatting, then head on to WealthBuilders Facebook page and all the usual places online. So Ryan, thanks for being a great guest today on Wealth Talk.
No problem. Thanks.
So Ryan's done tremendously well in the last few years, Kevin, to build up his business. Certainly this year with the difficulties around service accommodation, and he's actually accelerated even further. But as with most entrepreneurs, Kevin, they just get started and they don't necessarily have all the answers right at the beginning. And Ryan certainly didn't have the 1,000 property mindset from day one. But, as we heard from some of his observations of the mentees that he coaches, one of the important things is just not to have excuses, is just to get going.
Well, that's certainly true. And that's a lesson, that we believe is valid for all of our Wealth Builder members as well. But I always look for the catalyst, that what's the one thing that happened in somebody's life that made them change their mindset? That we call a catalyst, something that stimulates or moves people from a place of inertia. Now, he wasn't inert for sure. I think he said he was running around like a headless chicken, and he nearly became a headless Nick. That was a joke about Harry Potter, but never mind. But he had a real damage to his head, didn't he? With kind of running into or being knocked very seriously and damaged by a van. So wasn't good. So despite being a bad joke, it was a bad accident, and as a result of that, he had to think bigger and better for himself. And that's where I think, at least as far as we can tell, where the 1,000 property mindset came. And if you can imagine just saying that to yourself and absorbing that in the very essence of your wealth building DNA, you can't imagine doing 1,000 properties on your own. You just couldn't do it, could you? You couldn't, as he said, you couldn't do the viewings, you couldn't do the fixings, you couldn't do the greeting, you just couldn't do it. So consequently, the very thought of the 1,000 property mindset, what a headline. It's a great story. And it makes you focus on leverage, because it's not about you anymore. It's not about how do you do it. It's, who do you get on board to help you do it? And that's another reflection of what we say always, Chris, is don't focus so much on the how, but who can help you achieve what it is you want. Don't think you can do it on your own. And I think he's done an outstanding job of putting things in place and, getting his own wealth dynamic to focus on. So he does what he's outstanding at and then allows the leverage to fill the gaps.
Yeah. And if anyone listening now is perhaps new to Wealth Talk and doesn't understand some of the processes that we have in place to teach our members the wealth building process, and we have an acronym really for leverage, which is FIRST, Kevin, and we did an episode back in episode 11, which was creating leverage using FIRST. So FIRST stands for financial, intellectual, relationship, systems, and time. And time leverage is absolutely the most crucial here, because if you haven't got time for wealth building, then it's going to be a very slow journey.
Well, time, as I've said before, Chris, I mean, you could tell that, this gentleman is very big on time leverage. I mean, just listen to what he was saying. Control your diary, don't let it control you. The quality of time he gets, uninterrupted time from, those few hours after 5 a.m. And that's his unique way of doing things. But, no interruptions. doing things that he wants to do, whether he's on Peloton, whether he's or not. He's leveraging his time in a big way. And that's the most important thing, because if you don't give it time, or all you do is entertain yourself, you don't take action. And that's what he was saying about what other people do, is they can invest in themselves. Yes, they do invest in themselves, as many people do. But the key is overcoming the fear, accepting there's risk, and taking action. And it's the small steps, isn't it? You take some action and then you learn to change your view. You become a different person. So wealth building, as you can see here with Ryan, is transformational. This guy is very different to the guy who was running around like a headless chicken at the beginning. So, this is really important lesson here, that you don't have to know all the answers at the beginning. You just need enough to take the first step.
Yeah. Reminds me actually, Kevin, of a quote from Mark Zuckerberg, obviously the founder of Facebook and probably one of the richest men in the world. And, he said, I really want to clear my life to make it so that I have to make a few decisions as possible about anything except how to best serve his community. And there's actually a bunch of psychology theory that even making small decisions around what you wear or what you eat for breakfast or things like that, they kind of make you tired and consume your energy. So that was the reason behind why he always wears the grey T-shirts. But, I heard elements of that from Ryan as well, about just, reducing the number of decisions and just checking your KPIs once a week. And he said that with his kind of early morning routine, he's pretty much done for the day by sort of 8, 9 o'clock. And if he wanted to stop there, he probably could.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. I mean, I suppose when you focus on those things, and you remove the interruptions, and that other people are taking care of things, then that's the recipe to systemize your business and take it to another level. And anybody who's even remotely near 1,000 properties, and he talked almost nonchalantly, quite a humble guy, I guess, 100 properties within the first, in this year. That's outstanding, isn't it?
Yeah, it certainly is. So I guess, tracking your numbers can be looked at across all elements of your life, not just in your property business. No matter what pillar you're focusing on, what is your equivalent of your 1,000 property mindset, whether that's, in business or it's, working in joint ventures, whatever it might be, figure out what your equivalent is so that you think bigger for 2021. And it was interesting as well at the end there, listening to Ryan talk about, his mentees and the mindset that they show as well, the difference between those that really hit their goals. And we know, of course, that the average figure for our members, Kevin, to achieve financial independence is around 10,000 a month. And it was interesting what Ryan said there at the end.
Yeah, it was interesting. And it's amazing that wherever you go and whoever you talk to, there are similar values and principles in play. You just talked about those numbers, Chris. Do you remember, wasn't that long ago, we heard from Frank Flegg, and he was talking about the number of hours or nights, actually, wasn't it? It was the number of nights for homeless people that they were creating. And that's a number, so find a number that isn't just about your own personal wealth. That's fine to focus on that. But think of another number that just demonstrates leverage in action. Whether it's X number of rooms, X number of tenants, X number of businesses, X number at the beginning, maybe it's just X number of letters sent or emails sent or properties reviewed, or is it, investment opportunities that you've considered, or that you can think of something that at least at the beginning is a number you can focus on until you find something that in the end, I think one of the key components of those who are absolutely living a wealth building life, Chris, is they end up standing up for something. They stand out because they're taking a stance. And I think this is what Ryan is doing as well. He's found his niche, looking at the contractors. He's trying to do things in an outstanding way. He's really focused. He's really focused on helping other people to do the same thing. And I'm sure he's a no-nonsense mentor, because he's just saying, look, if you do it this way, it will work. And I applaud him for it. So, those things that, we encourage other people to do the same, Chris, which is, that humility to ask questions is always important, isn't it, really? The willingness to invest in yourself, not just for the sake of reading a book or listening to a podcast as some form of entertainment, but as something that you can take away and do something. And I think that's the essence, isn't it, really, Chris? So if you read a book, what action will you take as a result of doing that book? And review it and say, I've read this book, this is the action I'm going to take. I listened to this podcast, this is the action I'm going to take. And I think, excuse me, during the course of 21, Chris, I think we might just introduce some new ideas to have people kind of focus on small things so that they can overcome the inertia, especially those at the beginning when they can quite easily get into overwhelm and not get started at all.
Absolutely. And there are 7 pillars of wealth, 7 assets that someone can focus on to build recurring income and build their wealth. But as is often the case, Kevin, starting with one pillar then leads to another and then another. And we've seen that with Ryan. He started with property, developed that into a business now, and now with his experience is developing that into IP, courses, books, podcasts. So it's one step at a time, and not to get overwhelmed at the beginning, but to focus on the right path for you. Understand your wealth dynamic, focus, get into flow, concentrate on turning 1 or 2 wheels at the beginning, get good at those, and then the rest will often follow.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. Sounds like you've been learning from somebody, Chris.
90 episodes in now, Kevin. It's rubbing off. So enjoyed listening to Ryan today. Thank you very much for sharing. And thanks for listening again today. We appreciate your time. And we're looking forward to another year of Wealth Talk ahead of us, Kevin. And of course, we always love to hear our feedback and comments from our members. So if you're not already a member of our Facebook community, do join us in there. Head to Facebook, search for Wealth Builders, or you can just go to wealthbuilders.co.uk/Facebook. And we'll be back again, same time, same place next week, Kevin.
Okay, Chris. And until then, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.